voice17104.com. This is Zanetta Wingfield, and you're listening to the voice17104.com. The voice17104.com. Welcome to Did You Know podcast. Your host, Richard Utley, dedicated to the African American viewers. The program is aimed to celebrate African American culture and deal with the real and relevant topics that impact the everyday lives of the African American community through frank and insightful dialogue with local and national influencers. Every day, there's another horrible, discouraging news story, directly or indirectly, impacting African Americans. But we need to look at the shining stars in the galaxy of Black America. It is time to tell our story.
Good evening, and welcome to another Did You Know? Well, where I'm going to get started at tonight, as I shared with you, we're going to do a history lesson from now on. I'm going to give you 3 names of some people or 3 subjects that I want you to look up, because I believe that we need to tell our own history. We need to tell our own story, and we need to define who we really are. So last program, I gave you 3. I only give you the names or the subjects, and for you to do the research. And so today I'm going to give you Benjamin O. Davis Jr. So find out who he is. Find out what he's about. Also, I'm going to give you Malcolm X. The good, the bad, and the indifferent. Find out where he came from and where he ended up at, because sometimes I think that's very important. But we need to define and do our own history to who these people are. And I'll leave you with this one, Brown versus the Board of Education. I think that's another one. So I want you to look those things up. You know, I try to look at outstanding, inspirational stuff and pick out different things. So today I'm going to read this one to you. The outside world told Black kids when I was growing up that we weren't worth anything, but our parents said it wasn't so, and our churches and our school teachers said it wasn't so. They believed in us, and we therefore believe in ourselves. Marian Wright Elderman. That's very important. So we have to continue to give inspiration to our young people, because they need direction. Because every day we continue to hear about shootings, muggings. I keep hearing about people in our community afraid to come out and sit on their porch. And so as I continue to tell everyone, we got to do something for ourselves, because if we don't do something for ourselves, then shame on us. You know, we just had Memorial Day, and we remembered those people that once was in our life that we lost. And we also looked at the service people. And you know, today is D-Day. And one of the things that I want you to keep in mind when you think about D-Day, when you watch TV channels or when you watch movies, you need to know there were African Americans that was at D-Day. Now, if you watch movies, you probably don't know that, but they were there. And so we need to just take a moment for D-Day just to think about those Black soldiers who served in the military, but yet at the same time, they went over to fight for righteousness and the fight against evil with Hitler. They came back to America and suffered the same things. Just think about that for a minute. You know, I was reading an article by Nancy Elshman. She's writes a commentator in the Patriot News in Harrisburg. And she said something, I just thought it was very interesting, so I just want to share it with you. A lot of those people like me came into adulthood in the 60s and the 70s. Times were turbulent, but hope prevailed with peace and love. We truly believe we could change the country, improve it. We envision light at the end of the tunnel, especially for women and minorities. Hope is dashing these days. Politicians seem intent on taking or not giving. They shout from capitals across the country. You can't love this person. You can't control your own body. Your children can't read this book. You can't use this bathroom or wear these clothes. You can't. Didn't we all grow up in the land of free and the home of the brave? Question mark. While we pay respect to the brave this weekend, many of us are not feeling very free. And as I read that whole thing, then I thought about something else. And I want to paraphrase this, but all around book bannings and curriculum changes are screaming, you can't. You took a complaint from one person, just one, to prohibit students in Florida from reading a poem that was shared with the world with the last inauguration. Across this country, a single person is able to strip schools of books talking about woke, about racism and sexual orientation, and to whitewash history. I want you to keep this in perspective. If Florida and Texas come to mind, hear this. Pennsylvania ranks third in the country in the number of book bans. And I just thought that was very interesting. I thought that I wanted to share that with you. That's why I tell you it's very important that you keep up on what's going on up in Capitol Hill, whether it's in Capitol Hill in Washington or whether it's in Harrisburg or whatever state that you live in. The other thing before I bring my guest on, I want to leave you with this. You know, we just got done with a primary election, and I keep telling you it's important for us to register to vote and do what we need to do. Statewide in Pennsylvania, less than 1/3, 28% of eligible voters actually choose mayor, district attorney, school boards, and county commissioners in the primary. So if you didn't like the one in the primary that's going to be in the general election, stop complaining. Because I keep telling you we need to run candidates that will support what we believe in. We the people are losing control of America through the unchecked behavior of a number of elected officials at all levels of government. And it's very important that we keep control of that. Now, what is going to be on my program today? I am fortunate to have someone on my program today, and I'm so happy to have him on. Mark Rhodes. Now, you probably look at this man, and I'm so happy to have him on because guess what? He makes wine. But before I bring him on, I want him to tell his story. I brought him on for a number of reasons. I brought him on because I think we should honor him. I think we support him. And I think that he has a legacy to tell us about winemaking. And when I first talked to him and asked him to come on my program, I admitted to him, and many of you out here listening, we're going to learn something tonight because I know some of you out there, we used to Boone Farms. We used to Tiger Row. I know that for a fact. I know that. How do I know that? Because I was one of those people. He's going to help us tonight and educate us tonight. So, Mark Rhodes, please tell us about your company. It's Mark Val Wines. You started in 2020. Please tell us your vision. What made you want to do this? And who are you?
Well, thank you for having me. First of all, I want to thank you guys for giving us the platform to tell you more about what we do and who we are. My name is Mark Rhodes, like he said. I am a 30-year retiree from Harley-Davidson. And I also owned a company called Key Learning Consultants, where I did diversity training and conflict resolution training for about the last 22, 23 years, which became our avenue into wine. After dealing with race and race-related issues all day and every day, it got really tiring, and wine was very relaxing. My wife and I enjoyed going to different wineries and wine festivals and tastings, and it just became fun. And it was very relaxing for us where, we had a little group of us that were going, and it was a good time. And something kept eating at me saying that I could do this. I kept saying, I can make wine. I can do this. And I didn't really know, but I had a feeling. So I started talking to the winers and talking to the different people who were there, vintners, proper name for us. And they started giving me information. They shared with me. They started telling me, this is what you need to do. Try this and do this and do that. And I was like, wow. So me and my wife was on my way to see my daughter one day, our daughter in Delaware, and we stopped and got a wine kit. And she was saying, what are you gonna do with that? I said, I'm gonna make wine. She's like, really? I said, yeah, I'm gonna make wine. And our very first wine we made was Pinot Grigio. And it was good. And then I got the bug. I was like, oh man, we got to do another and another. And I started reading and watching YouTube videos and visiting more vineyards with another agenda, not just visiting about the wine. Now I was really looking at processes and time and fermentation processes and tanks and how do we get this going. And so we just kept it up. And before you know it, we had so much wine at my house, it was ridiculous. And I mean, I was giving wine away. I was having friends and family come over and drink it. And we still had all this wine. So we were like, okay. So I said, I got to find a way to get rid of some of this because I wanted to continue to make it. I love the variety. I love making the differences. And I called this PLCB, our state liquor control board, and asked them, how do I get rid of this legally? And they said, well, you can apply for what we call a limited winery license. And I said, oh, okay, good. Let's do that. So I filled out the paperwork, started the process. Lo and behold, an inspector came to my home because my first winery was in the basement of my house. She inspected it. I met all the requirements. And she said, congratulations, Mr. Rhodes, you are my third. And I said, third what? She said, you're my third African-American to get a wine license. I said, well, that's great. And she said, well, the other two were distributors. You're the first winemaker. And I went, oh, okay. Which I thought was unique, but it really didn't hit me at that time. I just thought, oh, it's good. So we just went ahead and kept making. I obtained a market stand, place to get rid of it. And believe it or not, the first day that I went out and sold wine, we opened our market stand in the pandemic, not before it, not after it, in it. We opened our market stand in the pandemic and we sold out. We were really excited. We thought, wow, okay. So I bought some more stock that we had and we sold out again. So we found there was a market for it. There was a demand for it. There was support for it. People enjoyed it. And it motivated us to really get deeper and delve into this even more. So we went from our little basement, little corner of the basement, where we still age wine. I age my red wines down here, to opening up our place that we are at now. And we have about 18 vats in the back. We make a lot of wine. We've gone from a micro winery now. We're considered a small winery. And that's predicated and based on the amount of gallons you produce. And we've been happy. We have a tasting room that my wife elegantly decorated. We have couches, chairs, neon, the bar. We made it a very comfortable setting. We wanted people to come. We do wine informational tastings. So in other words, if you book a tasting with me and you come and you say, we want to know more, I'll even show you how to do a proper wine tasting. We'll talk about the different wines. We'll talk about the reds, the whites, how they impact our food, the taste, the whole traditions. And we just go over everything, but we do it while we have the wines and while we have you here. So we enjoy doing that. That's been something fun. We've been having a lot of groups come in. We've had hospital groups come in, Rotary clubs come in, fraternity clubs are now booking us and coming in. And it's been a ball. It's been something I really enjoy doing. I love making wine.
I did some research and of course I had said to you earlier, they said there were 11,000 wineries and only 1% are Black winemakers or Black owners of vineyards. And the fact that you have stepped up to the plate to try to help correct that. And I'm hoping that people understand that you're a trailblazer, but we need to hitch to your wagon. But at the same time, I'm going to keep saying this all program. It's important for us to support you. And in supporting you now, you did say that you do sell wine at the farmers market on Saturdays. You say you have a tasting room and they have to call you by appointment, and you have an address, correct? I guess it's 1205 East Philadelphia Street. Is that correct?
That's
In
correct.
Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
And I guess, we'll put the information up, and then they can call you so that they can come down to support you. Now let me ask you this. Would you please explain to my audience, you had a dream, you had a vision, you and your wife had a vision, but it took time. And something that I want you to emphasize to my audience, because sometimes they get confused. Some people, they don't know the trials and tribulations that you went through to do this, because you made it very clear. You had a job earlier on before you made this your passion, your love. It was a passion, and probably in the beginning it was a hobby, but now this is your thing. So would you tell my audience some of the things that you went through, that you tried, and you might have got frustrated, but you kept pulling and kept pulling. And the reason I want you to tell my audience that, because sometimes they think it's easier than it really is.
Yeah, it was I started 8 years ago. In February was our 8-year anniversary for me making wine. You going to go through it. I mean, I did things and I didn't understand why they didn't work. One of the things you're going to have to learn in any business venture that you go into is do your homework. Learn about the process of what it is you're going to do. Get studied, get help, get mentors, and don't be one that you're going to walk in and tell the mentor what it is, or he's not doing you any good. You want to lay your problem on him, take the feedback from him. Even if you don't think that's right, check it out anyway. Trust the people that you're trusting to help your business become successful. I remember one time I made apples. I was making some hard apple cider, right? And I had about 12 gallons of it. 12 gallons, 2 big round vats full of this apple cider, real juice. And I got off of work one day. And when I got off work, first thing I always did was went and check my stock, check my wines, and this stuff was stinking so bad. And I was like, man, this stinks. What's wrong with it? So I didn't, instead of me calling and getting feedback and getting information, thinking that I knew and understood what was going on, the first thing I did was say, well, this is no good. And I threw out 12 gallons of fresh apple cider because it had this smell. Now, most people would think, well, yeah, I would have did the same thing. Not in wine. There's certain points where the yeast takes over and it may give it an off flavor or an off smell. And that's what was happening to mine. Mine was actually going on schedule. It was doing good. I stopped it and screwed it up and threw it all out. So I called my mentor after and I said, hey, I was making this apple cider. And I said, man, this thing was so stink. And he said, well, what'd you do with it? I said, well, I threw it out. And he said, you did what? I said, I threw it out. He's like, you're kidding. I said, yeah, it was smelly. He said, no. And he explained to me what happened, the process. It was part of the process and why it stunk and how I could have fixed that. And I was so pissed. I was like, man, all down the drain. He was like, oh. He said, from now on, anything stinks, put it in a bottle and bring it to me. He said, let's me and you go over it. So learning those kind of lessons on how to prevent things wrong. Because, in wine, you want a product that's going to be clean. It's got to be bacteria free. You want everything sterile. I go through Sanister and all the sterilizers like crazy. That was another lesson I learned. I was using too much. I was using it on everything. And the guy said, what are you doing? I said, well, because I kept going in to buy it. And he said, you buying another one? I said, yeah. He said, you just bought one about 2 months ago. I said, yeah. And he's like, Mark, you're putting too. So I had to learn. I was over sanitizing. I was overusing this stuff. So it's like, man, you go through those things. And at that same time, when you're going through that, it's costing you money. You're steady buying. I had to learn lessons with the TTB and registering my brand and what mistakes you make with those things. And things that people think they know about the law and what the actual law is, because they all forget that, since I've been in business, the PLCB has changed the law twice. Twice, because we have the advent now that Giant, Rudders, Turkey Hill, they all sell wine and beer. Well, that was a major change from years ago. Remember, you couldn't get it anywhere else except you had to go to State Store or you went to a bar. Well, that major change impact my business. So all of a sudden they were like, well, yeah, you could do this, you could do that and all that. And you had to stay up on that. Well, I had people calling me and saying, oh, you're going to get in trouble. You can't do this and that. And I was going, you're not reading it. So the confusion of the law and understanding what you can and can't do is stifling. That's something that you have to kind of learn to get beyond. Your finances, not understanding your numbers, how much you're spending on packaging, how much you're spending on juice, how much you're spending on yeast, how much you're spending on sugar, how much you're spending in rent, how much you're spending on everything. It becomes a major issue for you now when you start to make that business roll. You got to look at, for me, wine is very temperature sensitive, very temperature sensitive. If you have it too cold, the wine takes forever to ferment. If you have it too hot, it may ferment too quickly and start to taste like tin or steel. So it affects the taste of the wine. What kind of yeast you're using? Are you using a good yeast? Are you using an aggressive yeast? Are you using a yeast that goes with fruit? Do you use a yeast that goes with grapes? It's all those aspects of that. And it never stops. Then you got to go to the conferences and you got to meet other people so you can find out what's the latest things, where you can get discounts. You're always broke. I bought, I don't know how many skids of bottles, and I've maybe only bought from one vendor maybe twice, maybe 3 times. I'm always looking for a better price, better quality. What can I do better? That takes time. So not only are you finishing the process of making the wine, you're constantly looking for better packaging deals. We got to save money wherever we can. If I can save it on corks, screw caps, Zorks, you name it, on bottle prices, what size, what company, we're going to do it. Because why? Because it affects my bottom line. So I need to be proactive in all that. You're going to make some boo-boos. Yeah, you're going to buy too much sometimes. Sometimes you're not going to buy enough. Sometimes your shipments get held up. Sometimes there's like people that want you to come to things and they book you and get you excited about getting there. Then all of a sudden the last minute cancel on you. Things of that nature. And it's part of the business. Sometimes you'll have a wine going that's really good. You spent a good deal of money in this juice. You fermented it well. You racked it. Everything's going great. All of a sudden, some bacteria got in there and ruins the whole thing. And when I say ruins, I'm looking at 120 liters. So that's a lot of wine to have to throw out. And it breaks your heart because you're looking at money going down the drain. And wine is so sensitive. It could just take the smallest thing that'll ruin that vat, ruin that batch of wine.
I'm glad that you're sharing this with the audience because, like I say, sometimes, because me being a business person, sometimes people think that my business might be successful, and it is, but it wasn't always that way. It's just the same as you. I might have ordered this or didn't think of this or didn't figure it out economically. And, regardless of what people think, it's always the bottom line.
Yeah.
And that's why having you come on to tell your story, because what happens is they walk past and they buy your bottle of wine and they believe in their mind, because it's happened to me, so I'm sure it's happened to you, where they will say, okay, if that bottle of wine costs, we'll just use a hypothetical here, $12, in their mind, they think you put $12 in your pocket, not understanding, like you said, the bottle, the cork, even the label, all that stuff has to be calculated, like you said, and you have to buy the vats and all of that. And that's why I think that we need to tell the story and we need to tell it ourselves. Now, saying all that, I would just like to ask you, because I read stuff and I hear stuff. Some people say some things are good wine and some people say some are bad wine. How do you make the distinction? And I'll be very honest with you. Growing up, all of it tastes good to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, the distinction is really, honestly, it's up to you. You have to know your palate and what it is you like tasting. The better quality wines, they do cost more because they actually take a lot more work. When I get gallons, like I got 60 gallons of Marquette in. As soon as I got that 60 gallons of Marquette, the first thing I have to do is clean it. So in other words, we have to take that wine, we have to let it sit, let it settle. Then we take the top of it off. And in the bottom, you're going to see some sediment and particulates. After that, when it's done, we're looking at a process of making sure that we're at the point of yeasting and all that. All that takes time and all that affects the taste. So when I give you that finished product, if you like a wine that's really dry, bone dry, I always tell people, you like a bone dry wine, you might just drink a shot of alcohol and some water. All the flavor's been eaten out of there. But there's people that actually think they like certain wines and think certain wines are good based on labeling and the companies. It's really honestly and truly up to you. What do you like? What tastes good to you? And the guy who made your wine should be wanting to put out the best product. If you ever know, we boast about our wine being robust. We want people to taste the grape. We want you to taste the fruit. If I make raspberry iced tea, I want you to taste the raspberry, taste the iced tea. So we're small, so that gives us that. When you think about it, if you make something in a 10,000 gallon tank, it's not going to taste the same coming all the way down through. So you're never going to really know. Did you know California makes over 70% of the wines made in the United States? Over 70%. So they're not making it so that they're just pumping that juice out, getting it fermented and getting it over to the bottlers so they can get it sold. We never really understood that because as drinkers, it didn't matter to us. All we knew is it tastes good. We got in, we got a buzz. Yeah, we're happy. But actually, there's a lot of different flavors that you should be looking for. I love red dry. I make a lot of red dry wine because it pleases my palate. I can eat with it. I'm having some red wine while we're talking. So it's my favorite thing to do. But my wife is a white dry drinker. She loves the flavor of white dry wines. That's her thing. But did you know 90% of my sales, 90% of Pennsylvanians want sweet wine? Sweet wine. And if you don't have sweet wine, you're not going to make much money. We always say in the business, sweet wine pays the bills. You can do the other wines. That's great. But sweet wine pays the bills.
What kind of sweet wines do you make?
About 25 of them. Okay. About 25. I make hemp, raspberry iced tea, white peach lemonade, iced tea lemonade. I make a bunch of different ones. I have fun with it because you can do that. Once you get a good supplier on juice and get to the point where I'm at the point where we call it blending. I blend a lot more now. Then when I first started, everything was whatever it was supposed to be. Now, I mix like crazy. I mix Malbec with a little bit of cranberry. I like Sauvignon Blanc. Sometimes I let it age till it starts to turn. We have a wine in Pennsylvania called Cayuga. I love that wine. I like it it's really white and green when you first start. Then it gets a little pink. Then that's when I get it ready for bottle. So the characteristics of the wine, each winemaker has his own secret. Each winemaker makes it his own way. And that's what gives us our uniqueness. That's why when you walk in the state store, there's how many wines? You know what I mean? You never go in, it's dominated by one or two or three or four. It's tons and tons because they all take a different process. Sweetening the wines with I use 5 different sweeteners. 5. And most people use one and that's it. They stick it in there. And then what happens is when you do that, you have that same consistency with every wine. It starts to taste the same. We mix and do the differences depending on the wine. If it's a light wine, I use a light sweetener. If I'm doing like white peach lemonade, and that's a summery wine, it's really light. And I like all my wines, my sweet wines, I like to be around 9-10% ABV. And when I get it around there, it is a little alcoholic. So I want it to have just enough sweetness to just take that off of there. I might use one light sweetener. Then with some, I use a heavier, because it's a dark red, like our raspberry peach sangria. Our raspberry peach sangria is a very good wine, but it's a heavy red wine. So we have to mix a little bit more with that one or change the sweetener that we're going to do, what we're going to use in it. It's just so much.
Mm-hmm. What is the difference between white wine, red wine, and a rosé wine. What's the differences?
There's three big differences in white and red and rosé. The big white, is, of course, is a green grape, and believe it or not, some red grapes, because it's the juice. I'll give you an example. Chambourcin. Chambourcin is one of the Pennsylvania's top brown wines. It's a peppery type wine, has tannins. When we do Chambourcin, when we get them to process the juice for me, they leave the skin. If you see it when that juice first comes out, it's green, and the grape is red as it could be. But then we leave the skins and the tannins on for about 2 hours. Take those skins and tannins off, get the juice out. Now it's a rosé. Then if we leave it on there we put the skins in there and leave it in there for another 2 hours or so, now it's a red. That's off of one grape. One grape. So now to your Pinot Grigios, your Chardonnays, your Chardonnays, Cayugas, all those, Libre Milches, all those, they're very green, typical white, clear wines. But a red is a robust wine. It's a very heavy wine. White wines tend to have a lot more tartaric acid in the skins. So it's like a salt-like looking substance that'll fall out and settle in the bottom. Sometime if you don't get it done, clean it real well. They tend to do that. Red wines don't, but red wines have a lot of particulates. You ever go in the grocery store and you see in the juice aisle and you see the juice, you see it has like a little white rim around there in the bottom? Buy that juice, because that's mostly made with real juice. Less water, less concentrate, real juice. Grape juice always has a particulate fallout. It's always doing that all the time. In France, in the big wineries, you see them having all those bottles in the basements and all that. Did you know they have machines and people that they hire to go in there every day and turn the bottles? That's all they do. Just turn them. They have machines that go through and just turn them. That's to keep the sediment mixed through, so it doesn't get real laid down on one end of it. But that's real juice. People think something's wrong with that. I actually tell them that's your best wine. Get that wine. It's made, the juice is more robust. It's going to be more fulfilling. It's going to have a greater taste. Rosés you could also do is we also sometimes take, we might take Cayuga, and we might take another red, could be Malbec, whatever we want, and create a rosé. So we have to measure it. So we might take a gallon, or we take a test tube or a couple of my beakers, and we'll pour in until we get it to the consistency and the color. But the color isn't all. We want to have that taste. So the taste has to be pleasant also. So we want a sweet rosé or a dry rosé. If we want a dry rosé, they're easier. You don't have to do much work. You can balance out the levels. You might say 3 parts to every 2, whatever. But on the one that you're sweetening, you got to look for that flavor balance. You got to have it so that it's not overly sweet. You know what I mean? It tastes like syrup. At the same time, you want it to have that flavor. And you're going to watch which flavor takes over. I make a red and white cranberry, which is white cranberry wine and my red cranberry wine. Believe it or not, I have to use more white cranberry wine than red to get that balance. And it tastes good. Sells really well. It's a good tasting wine. So rosés can be either grapes that are, and then there's pink grapes that come out as rosés also. There's ones that they purposely grow that they don't get that darkened hue. It's too many for me to mention right now, but it's too many, like the grapes that come out in a pinkish hue. And that pinkish hue, they just go ahead and process. But in the States, those are mostly French. Those are mostly French wines that'll have that nice rosé. A good French rosé is great because that's a naturally grown one. In the States here, we tend to make them more, because it's hard to grow that kind of a grape. It's just not that easy.
So how is, because people talk about, as you said, California. I have the fortune of been to Napa Valley and to Sonoma, even though I admit all the wine, I tasted them and they told me different things, but after a while, it all probably tastes the same to me. It did. And what about this? You get the wine, you taste it, and I see people, they twist it and they smell it. What's that about?
Well, you want to get the aroma. You want to get that. Put your nose in. I always tell them, put your nose in, put your face in. Get a good deep breath. You want it to smell good. You want it, it'll give you the characteristic of the wine. You can actually smell sweet. You can actually smell dry. You can tell if it's going to be a robust cup of wine or it's going to be a dead cup of wine. You know what I mean? It's not going to have very hue or it may smell vinegary, been aged too long, air got into the bottle, and now you got a cup of vinegar. So you want to take a good inhale that, get it up. The swishing around in the mouth is really, it depends on the person. Some people like to swish it around because that's how they taste their food. It has to get all through their mouth for them to judge whether it's sweet taste, and then they start doing the comparison taste. You don't have to. I don't. I take a quick sip. I let it roll onto my tongue, and that pretty much will tell me where it is, whether it's sweet, salty, if the fruits are coming through, how old it is this the old, is it too dry, has it sat too long, has it been protected well? Your bottles of wine have to be air free. You have to make sure that. Sometimes those old corks crack and they give away, and before you know it, it ain't air free no more. There's a lot of different, how it was stored, if it's in the light, does it taste tinny? So that's important. That is to taste the wine. If you're ever with a date or your wife, whatever, and you're sitting at the table and he brings you and he pours a little bit, get a good aroma, make sure that wine smells good, because you're going to be eating with it. So you don't want to lift a glass up to your mouth and it smells like vinegar. You want it to smell good to complement the food that you're getting ready to have. So you go ahead and get a good whiff, inhale the bouquet, swirl. Everybody's got to learn to swirl. Red wine particularly, swirl. You ever notice them guys, they sit there and they stir in the bottle and the wine's shooting around in the glass? That's on purpose, because what you're doing is aerating and lifting the wine. You ever go to a store, you see those fancy stores, you see those really nice wine decanters?
Yes.
Those are for red wine. That's what they do. You take your red wine and pour it into that decanter. So you're adding a little bit of oxygen and you're stirring the wine base. You're getting the wine woke up, and it's really good to do. Take the bottle, set it aside, wait in case you need to put it back in. But once you decant some wine, you're ready to go. That's why they sell decanters. That's why they sell those things, to aerate and lift red wine. You never put white wine in a decanter because it's a waste of time. White wine is light anyway. But you want to get that aroma going. You want to get that boost going. Swirling the glass is just adding oxygen and air to the wine. You just swirl, swirl, swirl. You don't have to sit there and swirl forever, but just a few seconds is good to get it going around. Take a smell. You should smell different. If you pour wine into a glass without swirling it, I want you to inhale it and see what aroma you get. Then take it and swirl it and do it again. I guarantee you it'll wake that wine up. It'll smell so much more robust.
Well, I'm glad you're on here. I don't know that, and I'm a person that's putting down and drink wine. There's a lot of things that I did not know.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this here. What is the issues when people talk about oak and stainless steel?
Okay. I'm a stainless steel man. Oaking wine, I may get to oak, but I'm not looking at it. French oak and French barrel oak are best, but we have one of the best wine barrel makers in Pennsylvania. It's in PA. It's in it's in north central PA. This guy makes some of the best barrels for wine in the United States. Oaking wine is just giving it that woodsy taste. And what you have to do to oak wine, once you get that wine out and the acidity levels a little bit, you want it a little high. You don't want it too low. You want it a little high. You want it a little active. So then once you put it into the barrels, you're going to seal that barrel. And now it's going to soak into the wood. It's actually going to soak in and exchange flavor. The wood is going to exchange its flavor with the wine back and forth. And you let that baby sit for 3-4 months, maybe. Turn it. Another 3-4 months, turn it. So you might want to leave it in there to get a good oaky. It's going to depend on you, the winemaker, how oaky you want it to taste. On average, 8 months to a year. Then you want to taste test it. So you'll pop the cork. You'll pop the seal on that barrel. Taste it a little bit. Is that the oak you want? If you're the winemaker, you're making the decision. If that's the oak flavor you want, you're good. And you can go ahead and say, okay, let's start prepping this for bottling, get it ready. If it's not the oak flavor you want, you reseal that baby and set it back for another 3-4 months. On average, it's good to check them every 3 to 4 months or 6 months, but you'll have your recipe down. If it's a nice Malbec and you want the Malbec to be oaky, you might, the first time you do it, depending on where you got your grapes, you let that juice sit, maybe in 6 months, it's got the flavor you want. then there's sometimes you might say, well, I've got a good Cabernet Sauvignon here. I want to get this grape in there. And I want some oak flavor to this one. Well, Cabernet is a little bit temperamental. It's a little lighter, but it's also one that depends on the skins, the tannins. That might have to sit for 8 months to a year to get to where you want it. So it really depends on how oaky you want it. How oaky. A lot of people like the oak flavor, that taste. If you want to make it, that's up to you. But as a winemaker, we don't have the space for it. We don't have the patience and all that for it. Oaky just takes too long. So I just really don't, and I don't care for it. So I don't want my wine oaked.
I understand it, because I'll order some wine and I'll say, I'm not really into oaky.
Right.
Whatever, that oak thing just has a little power to it.
Yeah.
And you were saying that people can come to your place and you do wine tastings, and you will give them a history lesson so that they can appreciate wines. Is that really what you're saying?
That's right. We give you a wine glass. We give you a swirl, a spit cup. We also give you water to rinse, and we set the whole thing up so you understand how to do it in the proper manner. A lot of people don't know that, how to do it. I'm a member of the Pennsylvania Wine Association, and they taught me this is how you do a wine tasting. Oh, okay. So I learned from them on how the proper way to taste wine. And one of the things, you give everybody a sip of the wine that want to taste it. Some people don't like dry, they want sweet, whatever. And I teach them how to swirl, look for the aromas, how to smell it, then to do the taste. Right now, I make one called Malibu Sunset, right? Everybody that tastes my wine tastes coconut. I didn't put any coconut in it. I don't know where the coconut flavor is coming from, but it just goes to show you each person's palate is different. So I don't taste that coconut in it, but I've had several people say they do. So I teach them how to look for those little hidden flavors and make it fun. So, because when it really comes down to it, you want to enjoy the wine. Dry wine, you should be drinking between 46 and 50 degrees. You don't want that wine to get too cold, because in dry wines, it takes away from the flavor and it'll make the wine harsh. Sweet wine, it doesn't matter. You make it sweet as you make it cold as you want, or make it as not cold as you want. Doesn't matter, because the sweetness is always going to be there as a stable. So you have your choice. But we teach you how to swirl, smell, sip, and then we explain. So I was at a lot of meetings when they passed around the bottles from different winemakers, and each winemaker that made that particular wine had to get up and tell everyone how he made it. That was very interesting. I really enjoyed that.
Well, I'm glad you did, because I'm glad we're having this conversation, because people just think sometimes it's easy, and I can hear how knowledgeable you are. And like, I just want to emphasize again, I think we have your website that we can bring up so that people can take their time and reach out to you, because my attitude is that we have to support you.
Well, I appreciate it.
There you go. We'll run through your website. Can we run through it?
Yeah, we're very proud of the flavor. That's a big thing for us.
There you go.
That's me at the market. Yeah, waiting on customers. We give free samples every Saturday when you come. So you're welcome to taste any and every wine we have.
There's a story there that can go on your website, and it
Yeah.
talks about the love of the wine, and you're not far because you're in York, Pennsylvania,
That's right.
and you talk about you're small, but you take great pride in making your wine.
That's right.
People
We
need
want
to
you to
understand
taste
it,
it.
right.
We want you to taste the grape.
Then you have the urban, I guess you have the urban.
Yeah,
urban.
we're an urban winery. We're a city winery. We're very few of us in PA that are urban. I think there's two or three of us. One's in Philadelphia, and then it's me. And so we're a very dying breed. You're right. There's not many of us that do this.
Well, hopefully that you can give some inspiration to some people, and then go on your website. There it is there. So go on your web, and
That's our tasting room, which is different now. We've gotten it. We expanded it. We've got more in there now. We've got some more nice things in there. Plenty of seating. It's seating for 40 comfortably. We like no more than that because of COVID and all that. We like people to be relaxed when they're there. and you make an appointment. So when you come to our tasting room, it's only going to be your group when you come in.
Okay. I mean, I think that's important. You're at 1205 East Philadelphia Street, York, PA.
Yes, sir. Have a
Is this your
parking
phone?
lot?
You got a parking lot?
Yes, we
Is this
do.
and your phone number is 717-779-8459.
Yep. That's right. That's it. All they got to do is call me and let me know for sure they're coming. And we also have food. And I tell you what I'm proud of with our tasting room and all that. Everything we have has been bought from Black businesses. Everything, our t-shirts, our candles, our soaps, all Black businesses. Every Black business is around. We have food trays that we get from local Black businesses. So we incorporate using community people around us.
And I think that's important. I sometimes I get criticized, and they imply one way or the other. It has nothing to do. It's about supporting and building.
Right.
I'm a believer that we support ourselves, then we can support the community. And then if we support the community, then we can support the big picture.
That's right.
But if we can't support ourselves, then how are we going to go to the table? I'm a big believer in you go to the table to get a seat. You go to the table bringing something to the seat, opposed to going to the table with your hand out. And too often people assume that's the way we should do business. And sometimes people assume that's the way they think we want to do business. And so I want to commend you for what you're doing, because you're stepping up to the plate. I get a lot of lip service. I hear people say things that I have. I have the Central Pennsylvania Black Directory. I'm going in my 12th year. I can about tell you, I've heard every year somebody's going to do their own directory and they're going to do this. And guess what? They haven't done it. Now, why? Maybe it's because they didn't want to take the risk. Maybe they didn't want to take the financial, good, bad, or indifferent, or they didn't want to put the work in.
Right.
People sometimes think it's just easy.
No.
They don't know that, especially for you, you're making wines. And if you don't produce a good product, nobody's not going to buy your wine. Or if they buy it the first time, they're not coming back.
That's right. Yeah, we want you back. We want you to come back. We want you to enjoy the wine. I'm constantly reading and studying. We're very knowledgeable about wine. We want to be that conduit of information where there are certain wineries you might go to, you wouldn't ask them because you feel as though they might look down on you. We don't do that. We want you to ask. We'll explain to you, this is how it's done. I give tours in the back of my winery all the time. I show them the process. This is it. And, a lot of people say, I wouldn't show them. They might start making wine. I'm like, well, that's good. There's only 70 Black winemakers in the whole United States. I think 71 will be okay. You know what I mean? I'm not worried about that. I said, and if I can help them, I'm going to help them because somebody helped me. So I'm not going to turn around and look at them and say, I ain't showing you nothing when somebody showed me. So they come to me and I had a young lady who was driving all the way from Virginia up to York every Friday to learn to make wine. And we would just I was taking her through the process. Here we go. This is what you do. And she was doing really well. Now she's a very busy young lady. I haven't seen her for a little bit, but for a while there, she came almost, at least about a year straight. She was here every Friday, learning the process.
Well, that's good. That's why I have you on, because I hope that you will trigger in somebody that says, the legacy to continue to go on. So like you said, if there's 71, 72, if there's only 2 in Pennsylvania, 1 in Philly, 1 in York, there's no reason not to have 1 in Harrisburg or Pittsburgh or wherever.
That's right.
We have to develop on. See, I'm looking at a different point too, because I look at entrepreneurship. I look at, then you hire people, they hire people, but somebody's got to be willing to do the work. But the reason that I wanted you on, so somebody can look at you and say, you know what? It sounded like a lot of work, but if he can do it, I think I can do it. Because I'm a big believer, it's about exposure. I am convinced we could do a lot of things if we were exposed to it. if we
Absolutely.
get the opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. You'd be surprised how many people Saturday, me and my wife just did an event Saturday we were invited to, and we were, handing out samples, explaining the wine. And the young lady said, well, the company you guys work for, what are they? And we looked at her and said, we're the company. And she said, you make? I said, yeah, we make the wine. And she said, oh, oh, well, how do you do that? I said, what do you mean how? I said, but I knew where she was coming from because the other places that were there actually had workers there. We were the only ones that were actually the people who did it. So they didn't get it at first. And being black, they really thought we worked there. You make wine. I never knew any black people to make wine. I said, well, you know one now. How you doing? And just it's amazing. You can't shortcut anything, and you can't think if you learn in a year that you're ready to go into business that next year because you learned how to do a few small wines. It's going to take time and diligence, and it's going to take patience, and it's going to take persistence. You're going to be willing to screw up. You got to be willing to make some mistakes. I tell you the truth, when people came to my house, I know they got sick of me because every time they came by, I was always having them taste something. Taste this, taste this, taste this. Because I was working towards my goal. And I was constantly, I wanted it to be days they'd all come over like, all right, we all coming out good. And I'd bring out, this is apricot, this is peach. What do you think? And it was good for me. At the same time, it gave me what I needed. And I kept mental notes while I was with them. They'd leave, I'd go back and type them in. You're like, okay, this didn't work. This was too sweet. This wasn't sweet enough. But, you had to kind of like get that happy balance, learn the measuring, asking questions. And if you're not willing to put in the work, don't waste your time. Just make it a hobby and be happy. But that's in anything you're going to do. When I was consulting and I was doing diversity workshops and all that, I went to trainings after trainings, and I was the trainer. I was steady studying. I read every book I could get my hand on. I was going to different seminars. I was going to TED Talks. I was going to anywhere I could keep learning to be better in my craft. Why? Because I wanted to be good at it. I wanted to be proficient at it. I wanted to get that. I wanted people to call me and book me and get me there. And I didn't want them calling me just because I was black. I wanted them to call me because I was good at what I was doing. So you're constantly studying, reading, learning all the time. I make wine now, hundreds and hundreds of gallons. Guess what? I'm still reading, studying, learning. And it'll be that way till I'm done. Or I'm wasting my time. You got to put it in you that no matter what, you're going to make it. You're going to be the best at it. I don't care about Julio Gallo and all them people. I care less. This is Mark and Val's wine. It's going to be better than theirs. Why? Because I'm going to bust my butt till I get it there. I'm going to work hard at it. I'm going to get the flavors that I need. I'm going to get the publicity I need. I'm going to get the product out that I need because I want to be successful. And I want the next young African-American man, woman, or child to look at me and say, I can do that too. And pick whatever it is they pick. They're ready to go.
Well, and that's why actually for the audience, that's how I met him. I went to something at Park City. They had a festival and he was there with his wines and he was pouring his wines and I met him and we had a conversation and I was inspired by it. I said, I'd like to have you on my podcast. And he looked at me and he said, well, here's my number. You call me up and we'll talk. And I called him up and guess what? He's on here.
Man of my word.
You're a man of your word, but time is just going fast. So we're about ready. So what I'd like for you to do, and I'm going to say this and I'm going to let you close though. Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, we got to support him. No, we got to support him. He already told you, you can go to the market and taste it on Saturdays from 10 to 3, but you can call and go and have a private tasting, take a group of your people there. And it's at 1205 East Philadelphia Street, York, PA. Phone number 717-779-8459. Or you can go ahead and Google it. And you can Google him, Mark and Val Wines, and support him. but please leave my audience with what you want to leave them with.
And don't forget, you could go on our website and order on our website also. If you keep scrolling down, our little store comes up. So you can order from there and I'll ship it to you. I have no problem with that. But the only thing I'd like to leave you all with, I want to thank you first for this opportunity. This has been great. This is the best hour I've spent today because I've been bottling all day. So this gives me a good break. And I want to thank you, Mr. Utley. It was really nice meeting you at the expo. And I want to leave you guys with whatever it is you want to do what you can with what you have and start right now. Don't look for perfect conditions. Don't look for something to be in a certain way. Don't think you got to have $1 million. Don't think you got to do this. Start where you are with what you have and get going. Take on those roadblocks. Don't make them deter you. Learn from them. You hit a roadblock, that's a learning situation. If they say you can't do this because of that, find out how you can get around it or how you get that. But whatever you do, go after it. Go after it because it's important. It's important to you. It's important to your community. It's important to your family. It's important for everyone to see you striving towards your goal because we want to change the mindset of what we can't do into the mindset of what we can do.
I want to commend you on that because we need the kind of talking that you just gave us. We keep sugarcoating life. And we keep making people think that life is blah, blah. I'm a believer life has peaks and valleys, and you hope you just have more peaks and valleys. But you're going to have peaks and valleys no matter who you are. Nothing's perfect. Yeah. And what you said, hard work and determination. I want to thank you again. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to go down and support Mark and Val Wines. And in a few weeks, I'm going to come down there as well. And I'm going to call him up because I'm going to go down there as well because I believe we have to support one another. And we have to support a community so that we can build, so that we can become a productive community and productive people. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's not about black wines, green wines, orange wines, or whatever. It's about wine. And he's saying he got some good wine. And I've come a long way. As I told all of you earlier, yes, I have had Thunderbird with ice. It tastes good. Don't taste good no more. I know all of y'all. I'm going to leave you with not King Solomon, not Tiger Row, not Bally's Farm, not MD 2020. We're going to go to Mark and Val's Wines. So thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining the Richard Utley Show on The Voice 17104. We will be
that was fun.
04 every first and third Tuesday from 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Once again, thanks for viewing. Remember to visit us on Facebook at Richard Utley, and we welcome your questions and or comments.